Plot: Land of Silence and Darkness, 1971. Written by Eric Gregerson. Through examining Finny Straubinger, an old woman who has been deaf and blind since adolescence, and her work on behalf of other deaf and blind people. This film shows how the deaf and blind struggle to understand and accept a world from which they are almost wholly isolated. Voiceover off.
When you're blind and watching movies, what will you find? A blind superhero whose superpowers are acting like he's not blind. A sighted actor over dramatically touching people's faces. Or maybe the whole joke is that they're bumping into different places. A spectacular, macular generation. Tunnel vision to your television until they off this movie with audio descriptions. They're movie buffs who know their stuff. You'll be thoroughly entertained. Join Sky and Melissa throughout film history and Citizen White Cane.
Hello. And welcome to Citizen White Cane, at the intersection of two raging rivers, one representing blindness and the other representing movie podcasts. My name is Sky McLeod.
I'm Melissa Bukta.
And we are talking, this was my week. We are watching some Werner Herzog.
Yeah. Oh, so excited.
It's very, very exciting. The documentary film that we watched this week is called Land of Silence and Darkness. That's the order they go in, right?
Yeah, silent.
I think so.
Oh,
right?
we're getting off to a real good
Yeah, this
start.
is good. This is good. Yeah, that's it. That's right.
Good. Okay,
good. They're both equally important. Oh, it's like deaf blind because it's about people are deaf blind,
Gotcha.
and like in deaf blind, the silence is first and then the darkness. So you can
Sounds
remember
right.
that's my mnemonic. Is it's the same as deaf blind.
Perfect.
Yeah. So this is a film that was made in 1971. So a while ago.
Okay, because when I looked at the release dates that Amazon had listed, it was either Amazon or Apple, but they had the date listed as 02, and I'm watching the film and I'm like, this is what is going on?
No, I saw that somewhere and I was like, what the fuck? I thought it was from the 70s, and then it was like, yeah, it is from the 70s. I don't know why it says that.
Oh, that makes me feel so much better because all the camera work, it's shot on film. It looks like it was filmed in the 70s. So, okay.
Yeah, no, it's definitely from the 70s. Yeah.
Okay, good. Now,
yeah,
good now that we got that out of the way.
Yeah, it was I don't know why. Yeah, I know something like one place said that and I was like, what? I'm so confused. And then it's like, it was just completely wrong. I don't know why. But yeah, so this is good. We're just, there's dispute about the name of the movie. There's dispute
when it
about
came
the
out.
code up.
Perfect.
Really? Well, I mean, in a way, it's kind of thematically appropriate because this movie is a lot about the disorientation of deaf blindness and kind of the how you can feel very like cut off from the world or not, I don't know, feeling like you don't know what's going on.
Feeling very isolated.
Yeah, so it's really, I mean, I feel like we're trying to embody the movie by not remembering what it's called, what year it's from.
Jeez. I think Feeney would be very angry at us because Feeney is knows what's going on and is so amazing. And like the voiceover intro said before us, this film chronicles a little bit about her life and about the work, but mostly about the work that she does as a deafblind advocate in Germany.
But I don't know, in a way, I feel like we are similar to her for, we try to occupy, I mean, obviously not always, try is the operative word,
yes.
but like, I think that we kind of want to have a similar space of like being as a support to not
absolutely.
to speak for you, but yeah,
right. No, but yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I'm really hoping by the people who are listening to us that they are listening to our experiences, that they are, if they have the same experience, that it's that our podcast is kind of a boon to be like, oh wow, I'm not the only one. Other people have those same experiences or have experiences that are similar to mine, and I mean just putting these movies out there, whether good or bad.
Yeah.
Just, hey.
To talk about.
We have an opportunity to talk about these movies and maybe especially the ones that we really, really like. Maybe we can champion some stuff and people will check it out.
Yeah, and I like that this movie was a little bit more observational, kind of like very
the narration is very sparse.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of narration. There are almost no talking heads either. You're right. It is very, very, very observational.
Well, because also like there's a lot of translators, so there sometimes will be an interview, but there might be like someone telling a story, and then and then also signing, because there's a lot about tactile sign language and like just you see also at the beginning of the movie is a lot of like scenes of just the community of deafblind people spending time together, and so a lot of that, you have people like having conversations with each other as opposed to like actually directly interviewing people,
right? Which is it's so cool, because I've never, I've seen my fair share of adaptations of The Miracle Worker, and I know what deafblind sign language is, but I've never actually really gotten to just sit in a room for a couple of hours and watch people do it.
Yeah, I also really love how they do, like, I like the pacing of this movie, because it's like in the maybe 3/4 into the movie where they show the alphabet, like you've seen how they like how much people are using it and in the different contexts, but then you actually see an explanation where they put on a glove, and it reminds me of like when you're teaching people Final Cut, like you put something over the keyboard so it shows what the different buttons are.
I thought of a palmistry hand. You can find like diagrams of the hand and what each line is supposed to mean and everything. Yeah.
It was very cool, and it had like each letter was different ways, which I did not know, because I think there are different. I mean, and they showed a few different like tactile sign things, because they even, which I don't think it's tactile signing, but they also have people who are like feeling someone's face as they speak. So there's like a few different ways that people learn to communicate. We see
a lot of people, there's mention of touching lips or holding your fingers near someone's lips to hear, holding your finger next to someone's lips to feel the vibrations of the sounds that they are making.
Right. It's like the deafblind version of lip reading.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is, it is really cool. I mean, I have not had as much like experience with like, with deafblind people in media. I also have less experience personally.
I have one interesting story that I can add to this. My one and only experience was someone who was deafblind. So I was working at the visitor center in Anchorage, and my job basically was to answer questions all day. It was to talk, just to be the person that people wanted to talk to. And people would come in and ask for recommendations of places to eat or things to see or whatever. And I had a woman call me on the phone, because we had a phone bank too. And she said, my cousin is coming up to see Alaska, but he is deafblind. And what can I do? And I was so thrilled that they got me out of all of the people in the center, because I could actually help them and speak to, something of this degree. I am not deafblind. I am blind, but you're
halfway there.
Yeah, I'm halfway there.
Understanding the experience.
Yes. So I recommended a bunch of things for them to do, and just things for them to do, and ways that they could adapt them for this person.
That's awesome.
So and
what were some of the examples, if you can remember?
So going to the zoo is really fun, because of all the smells and everything. But they have a lot of tactile exhibits at the zoo. Also, if you tell the zookeepers that you are coming, you can set things up to where they can bring out animal parts or different things that you can touch. Basically,
almost like in this movie.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, the zoo bits reminded me a lot of that. And if you were willing to pay a certain amount of money, you can have a session with one of the elephants.
They should do that. They should make it price of admission if you're deafblind.
I know, right? But at the time, you could do that. Another suggestion was to go to the museum, because when they have class trips to the museum, they actually bring out a bunch of artifacts and things
nice.
from from Alaska's early days that you can actually handle, or replicas of things that are tactile. So if you I said the same thing. If you call them and set up an appointment, I'm sure they would be more than willing to accommodate you because they have everything there.
Right.
And I suggested like different places to eat, if you really want to get like have an Alaskan meal and have that experience to taste, because
being deafblind, good food places are you're really missing very little food.
Just different things like that. I did the best I could, basically. I hung up and I thought nothing of it. It was a really wonderful conversation, and I went back to work. 2 weeks later, they come into the visitor center.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I actually got to meet him, and he was super nice, and he is one of the few people in existence that I actually let touch my face. I mean, obviously, permission was asked beforehand.
Was it to read what you were saying?
It
is read the right word? Feel?
Mostly to feel and to thank. Because they had scheduled a couple of the activities that I had talked to them about. Oh, the Native Heritage Center has like a whole native village set up that you can go walk around in and touch. And, so that was another suggestion. But it was mostly just to say hello and to thank me. And I'm so glad I was working that day. And he was a really nice gentleman, and we talked a little bit about what they were going to do while they were here and how long they were here. And
you didn't get like an account of when it had already happened?
No, I think they had just gotten there, and she had come into the visitor center to get some maps because we had lots of maps.
Oh yeah, you need tactile maps too.
I know, right? Unfortunately, we didn't have any tactile maps, but she came in.
That'd be helpful for blind people.
I know, right?
I mean, it's really only helpful specifically for anyone who is blind, because if you're just deaf, then you don't. You can read a map.
They had come in to get some maps and to say hello. And also our visitor center was a bus stop for the zoo. Ran a shuttle from the visitor center to the zoo. And I believe they were headed to the zoo. So they had come to take the bus.
Nice. That's an awesome... Yeah.
It was really wonderful. I was so happy. I was always really excited when a disabled person would come into the visitor center. So I was like, I can tell you, and we can talk about adaptations, and
Well, I feel like there's it can be so fun to accommodate people. There's like a joy in that. It's like a way of like seeing the world in a different way, and like kind of getting to, I don't know, it's just very exciting to do that. And I'm always baffled when people are like, no, this is the way we do stuff, so this is just an inconvenience for us to like change the way we do things, that, I mean, it always feels like so frustrating. I mean, as a very light term, but like,
right.
Like, I think that is just why it's so toxic to have very rigid rules anywhere in anything, because there is such an excitement of like, and there's such great benefit to being able to look to say like, okay, this is how the world is quote unquote, well, this is how the world is quote unquote working, but like, how can people who have like different perspectives and how they interact with the world, like how do you make it more exciting for them? And that's like benefits everyone. Mm-hmm. I don't know, it's but that's really cool. That I think I've like sometimes I'll go up to like people in museums and be like, hey, can't see, how do I do? And occasionally you'll get someone who's excited, but like I'm always like, the proper reaction to this is excitement, because you get to like think about how to do things differently. Right. But a lot of people are just like kind of like, I don't have like a rote like answer that I tell everyone, because no one's asked me this before, so they're just like, I don't know.
And going to museums is not easy. I love it. I love going to museums, but it is they are so visual that it can get really hard after a while. I remember going to the Natural History Museum in New York, and I had a great time. I got to spend the entire day there, but I didn't utilize, and I didn't even ask if they had an audio tour.
I know,
because I'm an idiot.
Well, no, I will always ask, and a lot of times like audio tours, they'll say, oh, it costs money. Like they almost never give it to you for free, which I'm like, every single museum in existence should give blind people audio tours for free. Like,
So-
we're paying admission.
Sure.
So.
So here's the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So the best museum I've ever been to, because it had the far and away the best audio tour, was Iolani Palace in Hawaii. Now the entire palace is the museum, and they have everything preserved, and it's amazing. And you have to put special booties on your feet so you can walk around, because it's so old and preserved. But everyone is required to take an audio tour with them. They don't have docents walk you through the museum. You do an audio tour. And this audio tour, mwah, chef's kiss. They spare no expense. This thing is, the whole palace is narrated. You go at your own pace, obviously, but they give it to you on a little player. The whole palace is narrated. There is music. There is sound effects.
Oh my gosh.
There are quotes woven into the tour from like the kings and queens that have lived in the palace and the people who worked there and everything. Everything is described to you.
That's so cool.
It's
great for blind people.
so great.
That can hear.
that is true. I'm sorry. I just got really excited.
No, that's
yeah.
so awesome. I mean, but that's the thing, is why you need that flexibility of like, because also like so many
Yeah.
museums are very inaccessible to blind people, and as I also really love museums, and it can be very frustrating when you feel like, oh, like what is, like, that's why like art museums where it's just kind of paintings and stuff, I think are my least favorite of all of them, because I'm just like, I have so little ability to access this, and like I think most other museums will try to like do different things. Sometimes sculptures, I'm like, the kind
I
of blindness
enjoy
I am, I like
sculptures.
sculptures,
Yeah.
but like the paintings are, I'm like, I can only do so many of
Paintings
them.
are hard.
Yeah.
Paintings are hard. The coolest, it wasn't even a museum, but the coolest place that I went to when I went to my first and only National Federation of the Blind convention, they had it at this hotel in Dallas called the Hotel Anatole. And the people who had owned the hotel had like a hard-on for Asian art. And so this place was just covered from floor to ceiling with Asian art. And the cool thing about the art is it was mostly sculpture, and you could touch almost all of it.
Whoa, that's so cool. That's awesome.
So I spent my whole time basically like touching everything I could.
That's
And
a great deaf
all,
blind
yeah.
museum.
It was so great. And all the blind people, we did the same thing. Like we would touch everything. And and the art that I couldn't touch was really cool. I mean, I found my love of Wedgwood pottery at that place. So
Ooh.
yeah, but for deafblind, and I think there were a couple of deafblind members at the convention too. For
That's a great one.
deafblind, yeah, it was really great.
The City Museum in St. Louis is another great deaf blind museum, in that it's just basically a giant playground for adults of like, it's only somewhat a museum. It's just like these giant, like, there's all these tubes and like weird things to like
What?
run into, and some of it you're like, oh my god, you could like maybe get hurt.
That sounds awesome.
But it's really awesome. But that is of like, my family were very museum connoisseurs in a lot
yes.
of ways, so that would be a great one. This is the second time I talked about it recently on this podcast, but also I was thinking about the Museum of Jurassic Technology would be good for blind people, but I don't, because there's a lot of like sounds and things.
gotcha.
So it's like
Yeah.
kind of an interesting mix of things, though there's some tactile stuff, but probably there's, I don't know, but it is like a more sensory diverse museum experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't go into watching this documentary going, oh, deafblind folks are just, their whole world is just so unfulfilled because they don't have access to at least one of those senses.
Right.
And going deaf is probably one of my greatest fears, is either losing the ability to speak or going deaf, because I would give up my sight before I gave up my speech or my deaf or my ears. Yeah, no, well, go completely blind, I guess. I'd rather go completely blind and have my ears.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, because it's like we would have to change so much less of our life.
Right. And I'm not saying, but see, it feels so hard to say that, because I think Feeney and her friends and the kids that are learning, I think they are living fulfilled lives. I sure think Feeney is living a fulfilled life, and they are trying to live in a world that is not adapted
it's
to
just
all
like
for
the
them.
world is the problem.
Yes.
in pretty much every way. It feels like it. Yeah, I think that was the hardest thing about watching this, was just how much people were not, like, just how the abled people in all of their lives, in all of the, like, deafblind characters' lives were characters is not right. They're real people.
They're real
but
people,
like
yeah.
but they were just the abled people were so neglectful, like the way that, like, the parents and stuff that you heard about, like, and even the teachers at the school that
Yeah.
we see, like, it was just all felt like very problematic to me. I was just like, you are not giving people the sensory information they need, and you're not expecting them to, like, you're not giving the same expectations that you would an abled child, and that's abuse.
Yes. I mean, Vladimir in particular, I watched that entire segment kind of with my mouth on the floor.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. There's like a 21-year-old
22?
or yeah,
22,
something like that.
yeah.
I think maybe
Yeah.
22-year-old man who had never had
Anything.
was just basically given food in a room and was just
Right.
kept in that room.
He can eat soft food because that's what he can eat. And he never learned to walk, and he can kind of walk, but he can walk like a baby who is learning to walks.
Yeah.
Um
It's like shocking.
Yes, he never learned to communicate. I mean, it just how do you do that to your child? Wouldn't you want
to just do anything?
Yeah,
like
it's
something?
like I just, oh God, I wanted to scream at that parent. And Feeney is doing her best and trying so hard to communicate with him and figuring out ways that he's communicating with her. I mean, she's talking about how he runs her nails along her palm and
Right.
and changes the pressure that he applies and stuff. So he knows he's in there somewhere. He knows that she's here and that something different is happening. The radio, when they give him the radio for the first time, and he holds the radio to his chest and just like kind of
and feels the vibrations,
Yeah.
and like is
Yeah.
very. I mean, it's just that the amount of understimulation that he has experienced. I mean, it's just so. The fact that I think the parents are seen as like, well, what were they gonna do? And it's just like, this is abuse. Like,
Yeah,
imagine
yeah.
doing the same thing to a able child. Like, everyone knows that's abuse, but then if it's just because it's like, oh, well, what were they to do? It was a
Right,
deaf-blind
yeah.
child. Like, how could they,
Yeah, obviously this child is never going to be able to function in the world and everything. And sure, maybe this child will never be able to function like an able child, but
Right,
that
exactly.
you are denying the right of this child to function.
Yeah. And you're just like, it's just complete neglect. I mean, it is just abuse, because it's like, instead of giving the tools of language and you're basically, it's just such it feels so aggressive, and like, it was very hard for me to watch or empathize, because it just seems so wrongheaded. And like, I think parents, probably it's like more to do with like an ableist society that not
I
just
mean,
Germany that we all live in.
Right. Yeah, I know the thing about not teaching the kid how to walk. You can teach a blind kid how to walk.
Well, that's what's so shocking.
You and I both have blind friends who can stand upright and walk around and get around, and I'm like, teach the kid to walk, get him a cane. I'm not saying push him out into traffic or anything, but my God, do something.
Well, that's just so ridiculous. It's just like, I think it's just like, you have just the lack of imagination of what his life could be. It's just so shocking. And it's like putting that on the disability, and like, instead of putting it on the parent's responsibility, like, you wouldn't, when people trap their child in a room without stimulation and don't teach them language, we call that abuse. That is abuse. Like, I don't understand how it's no longer abuse just because they were born deaf-blind. That seems fucking bullshit.
And maybe you can't really make this excuse, but I'm going to throw it out here anyway. Maybe it was the time period. However, we know that there is a school that these kids are being taught.
And even the
in
school
Germany.
we have to talk about. It's
Even
a little problematic.
The school, I don't know. I'm not sure if I totally agree with the school's methods, but at least they're trying to do something.
The school is definitely better than then
locking your kid in a room.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
but
feeding him soft food and not teaching him how to walk.
Right, yeah, that's definitely on the grand spectrum worse. But the school, the thing that I really was bothered by is they're like, we can only teach them language that has to do with their immediate surroundings.
And they because they will never be capable of abstract thought.
Which is just like, what the fuck? What is different between deaf-blind people? That's not how this, what?
Yeah, no, Feeney is complete, and I know Feeney lost her sight at 15, but she's been deafblind for years, and Feeney is completely
because they were like, if you're born deafblind, but it's like, do you understand language is part of what helps people think of abstract thought? My dad has all these theories about like spatial awareness, but like that's like deafblind people still have spatial awareness. It's just a different kind.
Yeah.
But like that's an aside. But like that is just ridiculous that they would I'm just like, what in sight and hearing gives you the ability to have abstract thought and then communicate it? There's nothing. Like if you have language, then you can easily because I guess they're like, they'll have abstract thought, but we just will never know. Like it's like a black box. I'm like,
it's in there
you're
somewhere.
teaching them to communicate, right? Like, you know, how I'm just like, how does anyone learn to express abstract thought?
And I mean, one of the first sentences that they're taught or that they learn from their parents, if their parents are in this picture at all, is something like, I love you.
Right, that's abstract.
You can talk about love and express love. That's an abstract thought.
Right, it's just like you need to be able to talk to them. You need them to be able to hear much more conversations. Like that's how children learn. But if you just look at like how children learn how to speak and express abstract thought, there's absolutely nothing that is going to be different for a deafblind like kid other than like, again, like neglect, like not giving them the opportunity to, which is also feels fucked up to me.
All of the older folks, I mean, we see Feeney and her group of friends get together for a dinner or a lunch or something for a party, and their poems are read and views are expressed, and all of those people in that room are capable of abstract thought. They're having it right there.
Right, exactly.
And none of them can see and none of them can hear.
And just because the kids were born that way, it's just, it's so dumb to me. It's like really means nothing. There's no difference.
Right. I was just, the whole back half of the movie was hard because all the stuff with Feeney is actually really cool and really uplifting.
And when you see them as a community, that part is amazing. Much more. I kind of wish it was the other way around, where we could see this community at the end. I mean, I guess there's just like, I guess it worked better this way, but it was very sad.
The film actually ends on quite the downer of a note, and I'm like, but we were starting out so positive and it was great. And
what do you think of the ending? Because I didn't know what to think about it.
Besides the fact that the film just kind of stops, there's no like coda or
there's it's a coda and then it's just like the final scene.
Sorry, but there's no really like summation. And I guess as a viewer, I don't really need that. I mean, I don't necessarily need everything to be spoon-fed to me. I can make connections, but the film just kind of stops, and because it ends, the last scene is Feeney and another friend of hers and her brother who is deafblind, and you see really interesting juxtaposition. You see they're in a park, and the camera pans from Feeney's group of people that are translating and using deafblind sign language and talking, having an actual conversation, and then it pans over to the brother who is feeling up a tree. Yeah, and it kind of hit me. And it's just like, oh my God, because his sister says, he's forgotten how to communicate and how to speak and all, he's just forgotten how to do all of that. Right. And I don't know. I'm having trouble putting it into words. Yeah. But it just.
Sorry, I kind of made you put it into words because I couldn't.
It's okay. It just kind of hit me really hard in the fact that they're living in a world that's so isolating and is not for them, and yet they have carved out, the deafblind that have carved out a way to live in this world and to communicate and everything are doing it, but you still have this whole percentage of these other folks who are deafblind who are
society's
forgotten about and who are off in the distance, and he forgot how to speak and how to communicate and everything. So I guess we'll just figure it out and leave him behind.
Right.
Or something.
As opposed to re-engaging and like
trying.
And like it's hard because you wonder how much that is through like, I mean, isolation is never a humane thing. And I think, but people do have a spectrum of there's some, with coronavirus, we're finding out that there is a big spectrum of how much people can handle of like isolation. Like as much as it's hard to like understand, people are at a very different, a very different place on the spectrum as you are. There is a big spectrum of like how much you can handle, like being social or not, or, having solitude like that. Yeah. And so like some people, I'm like, okay, some people are closer onto the like very comfortable with solitude end of things, and that can be like, that could potentially be more of like a calming thing to like have very few people that you're communicating with, or
Sure.
or more solitude. But yeah, there's like this feeling of like, when does that become an actual choice, or
Right.
like when is that something that you're forced into because no one's really trying hard to engage you?
Right.
Like it feels like at a certain point.
There are people who love to be alone. I love to be alone, but you're right. After a certain point, I will go crazy. I need social contact. I need to talk to someone. I need to be touched. I need
Right.
all of these things, and I guarantee you that's what some of these folks need and are missing.
Right.
And they don't have to, you're right. And they don't have to have it all the time.
But it's just like, but it's still like, how much is it that no one's engaging with that? Because that was the other thing, is I'm like, you're so understimulated, and it's kind of the responsibility of us us meaning all humans, to make sure that that people who are deafblind are not understimulated as so many of them are, like to lock people up in rooms and like and away in facilities. Like that's the last thing you need to do. This is like, of anyone who shouldn't be locked up in a space, deafblind people should have as much ability to roam.
Yeah,
And
the woman who lives in the asylum, not a nursing home, an asylum, because there's nowhere else.
Because her mom died.
Right. And there's nowhere else to put her. And she is so far gone into herself. And we see Feeney try and communicate with her too. But she is so far gone into herself that she has lost the will to do anything.
And that's like, that's because of mistakes. Like, there does not need to be a world where anyone feels that way. Like, society, I feel like and then it's really hard to pick up the pieces. And I bet that it is possible, but it's just, this is like a case of like prevention of this happening is far better than like needing to pick up the pieces after the fact. Because like when people become deafblind and they're just totally cut off from society, and I think Finney, because she was only 15, like when she became deafblind, I think that probably was helpful in like still giving her that drive of like being a young person whose brain isn't fully developed, and like and having enough time being an abled person to know that you deserve to be an abled person, but then also like being young enough to have that like, I am not gonna let this be a specific thing. But she still spent, what did she say, 30 years?
Yeah, in her bed. In her bed, 30 years. And I'm just kind of,
it's baffling. And just, how could anyone think that that's okay to do that? Like, it just, I just can't, like, I truly can't wrap my head around it.
I mean, great for her. She got out of her bed. Like, she had a choice. She was determined to learn and to function and everything, but she had that choice. It is the other folks who, especially the ones, like you said, who are born deafblind,
right,
who are not given that choice.
It's like society says, well, you can, just that you can be a neglectful, like, it is neglect to not go out of your way to make sure they can speak. Like, it's just, I don't see how that's any different from like making it so that a child is not able to speak by not, having them hear language, like an able child.
Autistic,
like, that's abuse.
Even autistic kids are taught how to communicate.
Well, yeah, I mean, just like, I feel like like deafblindness, it feels like, well, what are we gonna do? Like, they're the one who's cut off, so it's like it's kind of on them being the one who's isolated. It's because of deafblindness, as opposed to be like, no, it's because of fucking society, and it's still neglect. Like, just because you're doing the same thing that an abled person would need, like if you're talking to a deafblind person and not doing any like tactile signing, and just just because. it's still neglect. It's still neglect, even if you think like, oh, well, I don't know. But it does feel like they're even going out of their way to be like, it's not just neglect by not teaching them language. They're also forcing them to be inside these spaces. Like, that's what you have. Like, that's the right thing to do. Because, like, normally you wouldn't treat a normal child like that. Like, so that feels like neglect to treat an able child. So how the fuck is it not neglect when you're doing that to a disabled child who's already needs extra support to, like, not be neglected?
And I think we can chalk a lot of that up to, I mean, there's no excuse for it, but I think we can chalk a lot of that up to the time period. I would really like to see Werner Herzog do this film over again. I mean, obviously, I don't think Feeney is with us anymore, but I would really like to see now what is happening. Yeah, what is happening in Germany right now for the deafblind community.
Yeah, it's definitely, I would hope that, like, there's people have more, like, access to things, but I mean, I'm sure it's better, and then probably no one's getting locked up in a room for 30 years.
I would hope so. Yeah.
But, like, it doesn't, I'm sure that it's, like, not as, like, good as it should be, you know, like, still in
right. No, I don't think it's ever going to be perfect, but I would hope
nothing's perfect.
Nothing is perfect. No, but I would hope that they've come further.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to, like, hearing this stuff was really upsetting, and, like, just the misunderstandings. And also, like, I think deafblindness, as it's conceptualized, is, like, completely being cut off from, like, hearing and seeing.
Right.
Which, like, as blind people, we know is not true. And I think that that's
Right.
another thing that, like, but even, like, I think within blind or even deaf communities where people do have some hearing, you know, you're still like, yeah, but deaf-blind people are cut off from all visual and hearing information. But it's like, no, it's not.
No.
It's the same as being, like, hard of hearing or
Well,
blind.
even Feeney explains that, you know, deafness isn't truly silence. You still hear. She talks about, you know, kind of a gnawing, like groaning
obnoxious
noise.
sounds.
Yeah, obnoxious sounds. But she's like, and
it's kind of like the light sensitivity that I have. It's just like, I don't. Would sometimes want to just not see anything.
Well, and then of course she brings up, you know, and blindness isn't blackness.
Right.
She says she still can see, you know, little bits and pieces of colors, and whatnot. So
it's kind of like if, you know, we couldn't hear very well or had a lot of things in our hearing that made it more difficult to understand people.
Yeah. They still have their you know, they can talk, they still have their sense of touch and smell and taste,
and it's like everyone's different too, like, because sometimes people were able to hear just by, like, there's a few different people who's like, if you talked very, like, loudly and near their ears, they could hear. So, like, there are different, you know, like, with how we navigate with sight sometimes, you know, like that. Just because you're deafblind, it's also like each person is, and it's even more variation because, like, blindness, there's only so many things the eye can, you know, do that's quote unquote wrong, but, like, you know, but then you also add deafness, and that has its whole spectrum of all sorts of things as well. So it's like the most diversity of, like, sensory experiences, which is kind of another thing that I was like, yeah, that makes perfect sense, but I never thought about it in that sense of, like, seeing a community and all these different people. And that must be so cool that, like, even within a community that we, like, so just, like, we make seem so uniform, like I think there's a lot, like, deafblindness, it's like no one is just like, we don't understand how that is, and it's like you can't hear and you can't see, and there's such a uniform idea of it, but it's like it's got to have the most variation of any disability, like, of just, like, what people's sensory experiences are. It's so cool.
And we see them doing all kinds of fun things. They have the dinner, they get together and see each other, and it's so tactile, it's wonderful. We see Feeney fly with her friends in a plane for the very first time. That was a really cool experience. And they're always casting out around with their hands, trying to find each other, because it's always tap 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 tap. You know, it's
so cool.
It's a constant thing. Yeah, and she's smiling, and everybody's having such a good time. And they go to the zoo, and they get to feed and experience the elephants. And, I mean.
And I don't even know if they had to pay extra for that.
No, they probably didn't. Oh, and they get to hold monkeys, which I think is extremely dangerous, but okay. I personally wouldn't want to hold one, but
funny.
But it was great. And the monkeys, you know, monkeys would touch them and grab their faces, and they would respond, and
It was awesome.
It was so cool, and they're all laughing and having such a wonderful time, and
It's
and
just
they get to do these things.
The rest of the world's the problem.
Yeah.
It's the moral of the story. Though there was one title card that was like a quote that really got me just right now, which was like, it said something, I think it was like, when you let go of my hand, you're 1,000 miles away, or something like that.
Yeah.
That was really, I was like, that really fucks with me. Because that, just thinking about right now, and like, I've just been so frustrated with how much, like, I'm like, I want like, that's an important part for me, and like, having them, knowing people are there, and like, you know, it's one thing to be able to hear someone's voice, but to actually be there and to be able to touch them is just so important to me. And like, to like, just thinking about, that's just coming from a blindness place, and like, it's so much more, even more important for people who are deafblind, and like, it's just, it hurt me a lot.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I mean, you can't see something like that or read something like that and not think about what we're going through right now. I mean, we are human. We need touch. We need tactile sensation.
And some of us, it's like, it's even more than others.
Yeah.
Like, and it's, it's really hard. But, I don't know. I don't have any really more specific thing to say about that, but it's just like, messed with me.
No, I totally, I totally get that. I mean, this movie was a roller coaster. There were very high highs and very low lows.
Yeah. An amazing thing that I read about this movie was there was 3 hours of footage.
Really?
Yep. 3 hours.
Are you shitting me?
So half the footage that Werner Herzog got is in the movie.
That's incredible. Only
Can't even imagine that.
3 hours?
Yeah, it's half of what he filmed. It's unbelievable.
Was this one of his first documentaries, I wonder?
I didn't look that up.
That's something that I should have looked before we even started.
I didn't
think about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because 3 hours. I mean, you think of Werner Herzog, and I'm like, doesn't he shoot like 40 hours of film for his thing? I don't know. I've seen other Herzog films, but I don't know very much about Herzog the person.
And like his shooting.
Yeah, and how he shoots.
I mean, wow. I just couldn't even believe that.
I'm a little, I don't know how to feel about that. I'm kind of upset in a really weird way, because does he just not think that these people are worth shooting more footage? 3 hours is, in the grand scheme of filmmaking, 3 hours is not a lot.
Well, no, I mean, first of all, film, there's a lot more like considerations, like it's not digital really changed how much footage you can get.
True. Yeah.
Second of all, I don't think it was about their worth, but it was probably about knowing what you wanted to film.
Oh, good point.
And also knows. Like maybe it's engaging enough to like, because I don't know, I really like that, because I felt like there was a sense of like, it wasn't, as much as I am an editor, like it's kind of cool to know that was what was gotten, and it makes it feel more like that Finney was the editor, because it's kind of like more of what was just bare bones what was already filmed, like that it was such a small amount that was actually filmed, that meant that you were kind of, in a lot of ways, you just wind up letting the subjects of the documentary, and kind of tell the story.
He does. I mean, these takes on the people that he's focusing on are very long, and you see all of the you perceive all of the expressions, if you can, on their faces, and all of the emotions are just kind of left there for everyone to experience. This movie isn't slow necessarily. I was never bored.
It's like Crip time.
Yeah, I was just kind of like, oh yeah, this feels right to me.
Yeah,
this feels completely right. I feel completely at home.
Well, deaf blindness is definitely a good example of why Crip time is important to remember, because things just are going to take longer to speak, and there's no. And like, to make things actually be accessible or like humane, you have to like allow for people to take the time they need to take. And like that's why I'm like the crusader of crib time acknowledgement. But I think that like, you know, all sorts of things, it just shows up a lot. Like it really is surprisingly common that you see how there's a time barriers make it so that disabled people are unwelcome in spaces or have less access to spaces. And then
I wonder if I showed this to my mom or an able person, if they would just be like, oh my God, speed it up, let's go. Like I wonder if they would get it.
Yeah,
I never felt that at all watching this.
Yeah, I wonder, because it's like, that is a good question, because I think that there's something very engaging about watching someone exist in their life in a different way. Like, I think that a lot of the oppressiveness of like when crib time is not acknowledged, is that like you're not watching someone get ready in the morning, that you are just seeing they came in 5 minutes late, and then they, you know, and then you're mad at them, like, you know,
right,
like
you don't,
that you're not actually seeing what's happening, right, and like how much more time it took them.
You don't know. Maybe it takes them 10 minutes to put on their socks.
Right. You don't know if like the bus had to stop for, you know, 10 minutes to get
that's happened multiple times
right,
to me.
Right. And if you have fun, if you use a wheelchair, it's always going to take forever for them to get it on the bus. You know, like they just, for most disabilities, it's going to take you longer to get places. So you have to like have that, but understanding. But I think a lot of that, comes from people just not really seeing it. But then sometimes, you know, there are other ways where you see someone who's like struggling with something and it's like, oh, this is inefficient, you know, they're not. But I guess like, I never know exactly how abled people perceive that like crib time thing. But I think, they're just, I think just able people are too focused on how much time, like on saving time. Also, it's like, I mean, you kind of have to live life with time abundance.
I've been called slow all of my life. That is, if anything, that's what I get called the most.
Yeah,
is slow,
like
because I take forever to do everything.
Yeah, but that's like with the world is what's saying, because you know you have to like things just take longer and you're already needing to cope with that. I'm just always like, society making that worse is just, it feels so wrong to me. It's like, we are, you know, if you really think that everything should go, you know, should be on time all the time, like what happens when you become disabled? Like what happens when your ability to do things like it just feels like a complete lack of empathy to me.
And then you have to experience what we experience every single day.
Right. And then the idea that this is not a social justice, like, I don't know, I was like one of those kids that I was like, charity slips are brilliant, like they're prejudiced. Like I was just someone who would just get real mad. But then as I got an adult, I was like, I was correct.
Yes, I mean, I was exempt from that when I was in middle school and high school, and mostly through college as well. I always had a 15-minute window, 10 or 15-minute window. I could show up late and I could leave early.
I didn't have that for a second. I never had that once.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then high school, I was exempt from none of the security guards could stop me and give me detention because I didn't make it to class before the bell.
What?
And I was also allowed to leave 5 minutes early for lunch so I could get in the lunch line.
Ugh. The one thing I had was I was allowed to enroll in classes early in college, and that was the best thing ever.
I couldn't even do that. That's great.
Really?
No.
Why didn't they let you do that?
I mean, I could obviously make an appointment with my advisor and stuff, but I didn't have first pick. I just had to.
Why not?
I had to get in line like everybody else.
Whoa,
I don't know.
Wait, I don't know. That's so dumb. I mean, that was dope. That was a really great thing. I really am a big proponent of that. And it was also nice because it wasn't something where I had to like be visually like, because you know it's all online, so I felt very like it was nice because it was an accessibility thing that I genuinely needed. I mean, I didn't graduate from college. I definitely needed that. I needed a lot more than that, but it was definitely not a thing that I could have gotten. I would have gotten way farther from graduating if I didn't have that, because getting into classes would have been I would not have. After 4 years I would have had nothing. But like
I didn't even get special treatment during room selection when it's
What is that?
Oh, it's a nightmare. It's awful. It was the one and only time I slept on the ground in the lobby of the housing building.
Wait, what's room selection?
So after you become a freshman, when you move into the upper class dorms, every year they have room selection, and you have a couple options. You can homestead your room, which means you can keep your room and go home for the summer and then come back and you're all fine or whatever. But if you want a new room, especially if you want to live in the Cutler apartments, which is where everybody wanted to live because they're great, you had to go down and line up for room selection. So what people would do is the night that it was happening, people would start camping out. Mm-hmm. And I swear to God, people would start camping out at noon. You would just see chairs pop up, and people would bring down TVs and video game things or whatever. So
I used to do that with midnight movies.
Oh yeah. This was
concerts.
This was for getting a place to live.
Yeah, disabled people shouldn't have to. They should be front of the line. Isn't that how that should work?
It should work like
Doesn't
that.
make any sense that it didn't work that way.
Yeah, it doesn't. I camped out. I slept on the ground for that afternoon through the entire night.
Do you have a disability resource? I mean, I guess if you have the ability to be late.
Yeah.
But like,
yeah,
what?
No, not for it. Didn't extend to room selection.
Wow, I don't remember if we had. I mean, we must have. I just remember being like, whatever, I'm gonna have a roommate. Like, I was just like, I don't want to be in an abusive situation, and it never happened. I was always in an abusive situation somehow.
I was also exempt from that too. I started in a single,
roommate.
Yeah, and then I moved to a double single that I got to have to myself.
Wait, then you didn't even need room selection if you could not have a roommate.
Well, no, see the thing, but I wanted to live in the Cutler apartments with my friends. So we had to do it that way.
We had just, you were in a certain college. It was like the Sorting Hat kind of, and then you were just in that college. So yeah, I mean, there was also a decent amount of residential housing, so I don't think there wasn't that much of a scarcity mindset about it. I don't remember. We must have had something, but I don't remember what we did. I think we must have just tried to, like, I guess, like, if you had a single, I mean, it might have been that it cost more to have a single, so it could have been, so that might have been that you just, like, said what you wanted, because I remember being like, there's no way I'm gonna have a single, even though I was like, yeah, it'd be nice, but I'm not gonna have one. And I think it must have been because maybe it costs more to have a single, and so I was like, yeah, it's too much money or something. I don't know, but it was like a whole non-issue kind of thing. I remember. I don't know. That's wow, that's ridiculous.
Oh, it's all sorts of fucked up.
Oh
yeah. So yeah, you can imagine the next day I was just great to be around. We got our room though. We got the apartment that we wanted.
That's good. That's yeah. I mean, I just moved off campus pretty early on, and you could just meet up with people.
Whatever.
But
yeah.
I went to school in Santa Cruz, so the rent prices were horrific, and I can't even imagine living there now. Yeah. It's anyway.
Oh, that felt good. I haven't gone on a tangent like that in a long time.
I know. I feel like this is a very tangent-y episode.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk about this. I was like, also this one, I was like, this is so difficult to talk about because it's, first of all, we've never talked about deafblindness.
No, yeah, this is our first. This is our first experience.
And it's like, it is interesting because it's like, yeah, technically, it's a technically different disability in a different country than we've watched any movies from, and actually in a different decade than I think we've ever had. So it's all new things.
Yeah.
So it kind of is a very, very different thing than we've talked about before. So we can't do as much, we really can't compare it to anything, I feel like.
No, not yet.
That we've watched yet. Yeah, it's very different. But yeah, it was also just hard. I mean, I think a lot of it was hard. A lot of it thinking about the isolation and and then putting that on to like the isolation of now. And I think like when coronavirus started, I was just worried so much about frustrated as a blind person and like thinking about like masks and how like if you read lips, that's like fucked up. I mean, I don't know. There's just been a lot of me thinking about how it's harder for disabled people, and it's just, I was like, oh yeah, deafblind people are having the worst fucking time ever. This is horrible. It's just so fucking awful. So
And
yeah.
I wish the documentary had ended a little happier, but I think that's my American cinema sensibilities talking.
My film school brain was
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's a good ending.
Yeah. I was like, well, that's how it should end. But I really wish that we could have gotten some happier coda on the end of the film.
Yeah, it is. And it's hard too because it's so observational. So you're like, okay, this is like a lot of it didn't feel exploitative or putting sort of a narrative onto something that seemed problematic. It didn't feel like there was a chance for people who are actually experiencing these things to be put at the front of the documentary. And it didn't feel like there was like a hand of God that was like, feel sorry for these people, or, you know, like kind of putting any narrative onto them that they didn't put on, you know, that they didn't express themselves. So I think that like made it feel like it wasn't, I don't know, it didn't feel as problematic or anything.
Right. I'm very glad of that. I would rather have that than have some, you know,
absolutely.
squeaky clean, happy, you know, and they lived happily ever after and their lives are, you know, don't feel sorry for them, blah, blah, blah. No. This is real, and it's a documentary, and it should be real. So and
a lot of it was, it felt like entirely it was about society's problem, but it's also like, but I feel like the documentary wasn't specifically saying that. Like, it was kind of allowing you to decide, and I think that, like, for me, that was obviously what was happening, was that you know, the society that had let these people down and was like not taking as you know, the population, it's up to everyone to bring these people in, and it felt oppressive, like that they were living in an oppressive society and that there was nothing wrong with them, but you know, the society was oppressive, and that's how I read it. But I don't think, like, you know, I'm a blind person, like, of course that's, you know, who's like very much believes that, like, you know, the value of being blind and how, you know, most of what we deal with that's problematic has, you know, is primarily societally based. So I don't know, like, of course that's what I'm gonna read into it.
Sure. Well, and I would hope that able-bodied people that watch this, and the people that did watch it in Germany when it was released, I would hope that this made them wake up and made them realize, oh my God, there's another percentage of the population that we are completely neglecting, and that this helped turn things around.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so. It's hard. I don't know, like, I feel like it takes policy, that's really what it takes, like, more than anything. I like the idea of, I think in some ways media can, like, I think it can change the way people interact with you on a daily basis, theoretically, but I think, like, some of the problems they're dealing with, it's just like, you have to fucking it's policies, like, you have to make it so that this is not, like, some of the stuff they describe is just never okay. Like, you know, there are certain things that shouldn't, you know, and a compassionate society would never let them, you know, anyone be locked up in a room for 30 years. That's just not, that should just never have happened. And yet, like, part of that is maybe, like, they need more resources, and it doesn't have to be punitive, but it does need to be on a policy level. It cannot just be like people changing their minds, because you need the infrastructure to, like, support these people. Like, I don't know.
And yet, as far as people being locked up in rooms, believe it or not, that still happens. I can't give you specific examples.
Well, now it's happening to all of us, but that's
people,
different.
But yeah.
I mean, now actually, this is a good time. This is actually a really good time to watch the movie if you're an abled person, because, like, think of what you're feeling right now, and like, think of how upsetting and frustrating it is, and like how hurtful it is, and watch this movie, and like, maybe you will understand kind of the problematic ways that we support, like, deafblind people, really also deaf people and blind people as well. Like, you know, it's not just, like, I think yeah, as a society. But this is a good time to really do some contemplating on that, you know. It's you might be in a prime to like be empathetic towards them more than you might have been otherwise. Yeah, I don't know.
And if empathy is the one thing you take away from this movie, it's a start.
Yeah, it is a start. I think that's true. I think that like an understanding like that they're I think like seeing them be happy and like have a community and have a supportive environment. I think that was like for me what was most like powerful about it, because I think that the problem is that people they don't, I mean, it's only sort of empathy. They're basically pitying people, like, you know, that they're seeing it as like, oh, well, you know, to have empathy for these people just means to be like, oh, poor you don't have, you know, whatever. And so I think that
there's a fine line between empathy and pity.
Yeah.
Pity is not what we're looking for.
No,
here.
definitely not. And I think also like watching people struggle, I mean, it felt like the people who had less, like, really it was just so obvious to me that society was the problem. Like, so I don't know, but I'm just like, I come from such a biased perspective that, of course, I don't know. It would be interesting to know if, like, an abled person watching this, like, I'm sometimes surprised when I watch stuff with abled people where I'm like, really? That's what you got out of this? Like, this is so, I can't even imagine. Like, I remember being in a lecture class in college that was like, there was a short documentary that was about a colony of people with leprosy.
Oh, okay.
And they were talking about how like there was a cure. They were not a cure, but there was treatment for it, and they were, you know, and people were like also choosing not to have the treatment, and like they're talking about like in the class, I just remember people being like, you know, just that the problem is that they don't have access to these treatments, or like that they can't, like that they have to deal with leprosy, and I remember just being the only one in the class who's like, maybe part of it is like that society is judgmental of these people, and that they have a community there, and that they don't necessarily, that it's not necessarily just about them, like, you know, not having the ability to, like, you know, assimilate. And it was just like, I was like, we're in a lecture class, like nobody thought of that. Like, I don't know, it was just like one of those things where I felt like I was just I was seeing the world in a completely different way than everyone else, which is true. But, you know, yeah. Do we want to do our ratings? I feel like
I think we've
been circling it a bit.
We've been circling there. We're there. Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. Wow. I gotta say, I know we usually rate documentaries higher because they are about real people. Yeah. But I still gotta give this a 2200.
Interesting. Like, as opposed to higher, because that's just legal blindness. So
yeah. I suppose I don't think the back half of this film holds it back. I think it is necessary, and I think it's there because he was hopefully trying to shed some light on the deafblind community and what they go through and how they are taught. Yeah. But it was just still, it was so heartbreaking, and it's just. I guess I can't really fault the movie for that.
Yeah, but I mean, it can be hard to watch, and we're rating it from a disabled perspective. So I think like the fact that that's really upsetting to watch as a disabled person is fair to put that in your rating.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard. It was hard not to just sit there and sob. Yeah. And just be angry, not feel sorry for, but be angry because as a disabled person, I've had all these opportunities that these kids didn't get and never got. Yeah. And I'm just, it was righteous anger. And the gentleman at the end who just forgot how to speak, forgot how to communicate. And so he's just there. It just felt frustrating. It was like screaming into the wind. Yeah. Basically. So, yeah, 2200, it's not a bad movie. Not at all. It is very competent. Obviously, it's very competently made, but it hurt. Yeah. It hurt a lot.
Yeah.
But would recommend still. I mean, obviously, yeah.
Right. I like the idea that like documentaries have to be like 22. It has to be legally blind because it is at least having real blind people.
You start there and go up.
Yeah.
maybe I should rate this higher.
No, but I think what you're saying is totally fair, and yeah, don't second guess your rating. It's
Cool.
totally valid. Cool. Now I'm gonna make you second guess it more because I'm giving it a 2300.
Yes.
So this is one time we're higher. But I think what you're saying is totally right in a lot of ways, and I also had that feeling, and I think weirdly enough, like talking about it in the context of right now, like this week where things are closing down even further because of like the lockdown, and we're getting into the holidays, and so there's like a feeling of like quarantine is very much on the mind
it's
of
happening.
everyone.
It's a real thing.
Yeah, it feels very present, but I feel like this movie, I think there's kind of, because I think sometimes the quarantine has made me feel like, oh, disabled people really don't matter, because like once able people kind of have to have the same acts, like the same life as a disabled person, like they fucking can't handle their shit, and then disabled people are just suffering the most because we then are like isolated, plus we have to deal with what all the able people, it's not like we have to deal with less, so you feel very helpless. And so I think in a way, like, what I liked about this is it kind of gave justification to that, like, this is harder on us, and like this is also something that we deal with, like this is like the isolation is something that is forced upon us, and it doesn't need to be, and there has to be that acknowledgement. So there was like just a little bit for me where I was just like, yeah, this is a real thing, like this is like the suffering that we have to go through right now is genuine and is
right now and on the daily.
Yeah, right. And like, and that you kind of, and the humans will add on to that suffering, and will make it seem like, will downplay what they're doing to add on to that suffering. And I think that like, and also like right now just saying like, hey, like, the quarantine's really helping for coronavirus, but it creates a lot of other problems, like, and and you have to like address those, and just pointing out the other problems it creates does not mean that I want everyone to die of coronavirus, like, and I think there's this kind of like, we can't hold these dualities as much in our heads for some reason, I don't know why, but like but I think that I guess I'm very much looking at it for the lens of right now, super strongly, more than anything else. But I think there was just this kind of like seeing the harm that can do, and like wanting and feeling like as a society we always have the ability to do better. And like in my head I was just like, we still have the ability to do better. I think also the fact that this was 50 years ago makes me feel like it made it feel a little more removed too, like simultaneously, because I could be like, well, 50 years have gone by, so maybe everything's a little bit better, knowing that that's not 100% true, but like it felt a little bit more like I didn't have to like be triggered by it, if that makes sense. Not that that's really a good justification for that, but like at least on a personal level it gave me some distance. But I don't know. I think I like that it was just observational though, and that we really got to like hear from the actual people. And I'd recommend this movie even if you are blind. If you're, we were talking about before we started recording that the subtitles, because it takes longer to speak for a lot of the people that we're following, it's actually, you can read pretty much all the subtitles, so they actually are on the screen for a pretty long time, so it's not bad if you have trouble reading.
And I'd love to try and learn a little bit of deafblind sign language. I mean, at least to say hello or sign my name or something.
And German, because like I was reading a lot of reviews and they're like, the English translation is really bad. Like there's a lot of different things that were much, like a lot of the words that like Finney and other people were saying were just like so much more poetic and like poignant, because some of it I was like, this, like the one that I was riffing off for the intro about the rivers, I was like, this has to be something that's slightly different in German because it doesn't fully make sense in English. And someone was like, oh yeah, there's like mistranslations.
I feel a little cheated now because
the Germans have such great words for a lot of stuff that we don't have. Like like there's like a lot of words that I've learned where I'm like, oh yes, we need that in English, but you just use the German one.
So my favorite German word is not super long or anything, but it's Krankenwagen. Krankenwagen. It's the word for ambulance.
Yeah, Krankenwagen.
I love it so much.
Yeah, no, it is that is one of my favorite German words. Though we do have a word for ambulance. No, like Umwelt, which is
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's like the experience of someone's perspective. So like my Umwelt is like this actually movie was a lot about Umwelts and like the different, like the summation of that of a human being's perceptions is an Umwelt, which we need a word for that. Like it's a very important thing to have a word for. So yeah, Germans, there's a lot of ones like that where it's like, yeah, okay, guys, good job for actually making good words.
German is an incredible language. I didn't learn it going through school, but it's so amazing.
Yeah, and they apparently, if you are a German speaker, this movie apparently is even better to watch because.
Well, dang it!
Yeah, I'm
gonna have to.
Now we have to both. I'm trying to learn German, but
yeah.
But it's like when you learn German on an app, you're not getting all of those words that are like actually don't have equivalents in English.
Right. Well, that and you're not having an actual conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
The best way to learn a language is to be conversational with somebody.
Definitely.
Yeah, but
anyway, so that's Land des Schweigens und der Dunkelheit. We're done. We did the movie.
We did it. Next week.
Yeah, next week is December 17th.
Yay!
So we're coming up on, it's I think maybe the second to last night of Hanukkah, but
nice.
It's another holiday.
Yay! And I wanted to do something super Christmassy because I can't help it. I'm a sucker for Christmas movies in general, but I'm even more of a sucker. And I found out that you are also a sucker for the good old Rankin Bass holiday specials.
Yeah, and I was like, well, that's kind of fun, but like, it's not like there's one with a blind character.
And I was like, hold it. I watch almost all of them every single year because I can, and I love them. And I said, oh, guess what? There's one about a blind person.
Which I was like, well, we're 100% doing that.
Yes. So next week, we're watching The Story of the First Christmas or The Story of the First Christmas Snow.
This is very exciting. I'm super excited for this.
I'm very stoked. Angela Lansbury is in it. She plays a nun that sings. I'm very excited.
You just have to at that point.
Yes.
So that will be very fun. I'm looking forward to it. And then I'll have to see if I can find another Christmas movie that has a blind character. But yeah, maybe I'll, it's Christmas Eve. We'll tune in next week to first of all hear the great episode that we do about what is the name?
It's called The First Christmas or The Story of the First Christmas Snow.
The Story of the First Christmas Snow. That involves the other title, so I'm just going to call it that. The Story of the First Christmas Snow.
There you go. Perfect.
Very, very concise. That's like, it's like a late phases where it is like 5 names.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to that. And
Good.
You can watch it on.
You can watch this on Amazon.
Okay.
You can rent it. Yep.
Cool. That's what we'll be doing. So tune in
Yay.
next week for that. Then that's the thing that leaves is our what we're blindsided by this week.
Yes.
I can go first.
Go for it.
So I like always trying to figure out what I'm gonna do. I recently have gone on a couple hikes, so I wanted to plug some hikes. I feel like
do it.
Like doing kind of non-media related ones sometimes, and it is one of the few things during quarantine that we can still do. So you have to bring a mask, and like if you go on a rainy day, life hack, less people around, so it's very cool. And if you have light sensitivity, great time to go. But I have been enjoying getting to do that, being outside. It is also a very deafblind friendly experience, so kind of topical because it's mostly, it's a very tactile experience hiking. So I'll plug the 2 hikes that I've went on recently.
Where did you go?
One of them was in Washington, and that was really on a beautiful rainy day, and it has like, it's very ADA friendly, so you had like a big like cement like trail
nice.
sort of, that was like, it's very nice. We went to a waterfall, but it's like it was super easy to do, so I didn't feel scared falling off a cliff at all. That one is called Molten Falls. That was the hike that went on, and yeah, you get to see waterfalls and beautiful trees, so it's very nice. The other one that we just went on last week was it's the Clatsop Loop. Oh my god, Clatsop Loop. Not easy to say out loud.
No.
Hike, which was a lot of fun. It was more sunny and there was more people, but it is if you've seen Twilight.
Oh my god, yes.
There's a scene in Twilight they filmed there, but it's like on a beach, but then you have like the forest that we hiked. It was mostly the hike was in the forest.
Freaking sign that says Twilight was filmed here.
Yeah, apparently,
oh my
yes.
God, that's
I didn't
fabulous.
see it because I can't see, but
right.
But that's yeah. So there's that, and there was also, it's very cool because there's a lighthouse, and then you get to have a good view of the lighthouse. It's very far away, very small. You can't see it at all. I was like, is that anything? And my partner was like, yeah, it's just it's over there, and I was like, okay, so that's not a rock? He's like, no, it's a lighthouse. It's like, okay. So that part's not as exciting if you're blind, but it was a lot of fun, and it's very that was a lot more steep too, so yeah, it was definitely a good workout. I was like, difficulty breathing, but it was fun. I'm just gonna all of my recommendations involve like what's the right word, like talking about how they also suck. So sorry about that. But yeah, so that's mine. It's just hiking, get outdoors. It's, just because it's rainy and lovely out doesn't mean you can't go on a hike. That's what I say.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. That sounds beautiful.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I need to do more of that.
You need to like have someone who can drive, so that's part of the problem.
That's the hardest part. Is yeah. I'm such a bookworm. I would bring a book anyway and just be like, have fun, guys. I'm gonna read. So appropriately, mine is a book.
Okay.
This week, I read. I love to read themed books during the holiday season. Like for Halloween, I'll read something really scary or traditional, like Frankenstein or something. For Christmas, I usually will read A Christmas Carol, but I'll read some other Christmas-themed book. So for Thanksgiving, I usually don't read one. And then this year I thought, I really want to try and do that. So I read The Wordy Shipmates by Sarah Vowell.
Ooh.
Yeah, and the audiobook is great. She narrates it.
Oh, awesome.
And she...
radio personality.
Yes, so she's amazing at it. And I actually got to see her live once too.
Oh, wow.
I met her. She's super nice.
That's awesome.
She's so cool. Yeah, so she narrates the book, and she uses, it's a historical book, so obviously she uses a lot of quotes from historical documents, and a lot of the pilgrims who left England and came to America. They kept documents of everything. They were the best at it. I mean, they kept just books and books and books and books and letters and everything of all of the voyages and the hardships that they experienced. So it's all there to find. So she casts a bunch of famous folks to read those quotes.
Oh, wow.
In the audiobook.
Audiobook.
Yeah, so it's really cool. So let's see. Will Forte, John Slattery, John Hodgman, John Oliver.
Only Johns.
All the Johns. She called all the famous Johns. Eric Bogosian. I mean, there's a bunch of people in there as well that whose voices that you get to hear. So it's really, really cool. And I enjoyed the heck out of it because I honestly don't know a lot of the quote unquote real, not quote unquote, the real history, because
right.
I grew up in the American public school system, so I learned that
terrible.
The Puritans and the Indians got together on Thanksgiving and blah blah blah. No,
Did you have to do missions?
No.
Ugh. The worst.
But luckily, this book talks about none of that, and when it does, it talks about the real situation that happened. Like I didn't know that the reason why Squanto got along so well with the Puritans and was able to show them how to plant corn and everything is because Squanto was taken by sailors, forced to learn English, and forced to taken to England and was became an English person, and then brought back to America. So yeah, he could teach all of the Englishmen how to do everything because he was forced to learn how to communicate with all of the Englishmen. There was I'm blanking on the person's actual name, but he was voiced by Peter Dinklage in the audiobook, and he had come up with a book called The Key, which was his translation of English and Pequot and a couple of the other native languages. Native American languages that the Puritans encountered. But it is a really fascinating book. Sarah Vowell, of course, infuses it with her incredible wit, and I learned a whole lot more about the Puritans and the Native Americans in the 1600s than I knew going in.
Nice.
So yeah, it felt very appropriate.
That's getting a lot of like oppression.
Oh, extremely. Oh, so much. So much oppression and genocide. It's not a happy book.
Yeah, I can't imagine that would be a happy book.
No, but it's funny. So,
I mean, you gotta be gallows humor.
A little bit, yeah. But I mean, it's she takes everything. She's a history buff, so obviously all of her sources are taken directly from the documents and everything that have been found.
Nice.
So yeah, that's The Wordy Shipmates by Sarah Vowell. You can find the audiobook. I have it on Audible, but you can rent it from the library.
Nice.
But yeah, that's my what I was blindsided by.
2 weeks from Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 weeks after. I'm sorry, it's my own fault for making it.
I forgot. Oh no.
No, it's okay. I mean, yeah, no, it's all good. You're not the one who has to like schedule all of them, so I'm always thinking about like, when does this episode air? I was even like, for my thing that I was gonna pick, I was like, oh, I mean, I could try to think of something Thanksgiving themed, and I was like, but no.
No, I didn't even
but it's okay.
Okay, because I can do another
It's what
one.
you were reading. No,
I
mean, if I thought that it was so bad, I would have stopped you.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I literally finished the book yesterday, so
yeah. So you were on time for life, but not specifically for my like, I want 2 weeks to edit the episodes schedule. But.
Well, I'll make sure to find something Christmassy for next week.
Yeah,
that's actually going to be a Christmassy.
Yeah, exactly. So, this episode was, is kind of this is just a peek into our life and what's going on. It's not overly edited. It's just an experience of our own experiences. We only got 3 hours worth of footage, and now you're hearing the hour and a half that we could know. Anyway, know why I'm trying to make everything thematic today, but yeah. So that's it for this week. I think we did it.
I think we did it. Yep.
Pretty sure.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Our theme song is by Lucia Fasano. Our YouTube is Citizen White Cane Podcast. You can turn on the closed captions on there, and YouTube actually is really good about having a lot of accessibility around how big the closed captions are. So if you want to make them really big with a dark background, if you both have trouble hearing and seeing, if you're deafblind, that's an option. So good life hack there. If you want to look at us on Twitter or hear us on Twitter, our Twitter's White Cane Pod. Our Facebook and our Instagram are both Citizen White Cane, and our email is citizenwhitecanepod@gmail.com. If you would like to leave us a voice message, there's a link in the show notes. Are you deaf, blind, and like, well, is it different 50 years out?
What is your favorite sign to do in deaf-blind sign language?
Yeah. And do you have like a really spot-on Werner Herzog impression, and can you give a review of this movie using that impression?
That's very important.
Yes. Any of those, there's a link in the show notes. Don't forget to rate and review and subscribe to the podcast. And come back next week for the story of the first Christmas snow. Is that right?
You got it.
Yes. Tune in next week for that. Okay, bye.
Bye.